those guys that can vertical jump 40 inches, those guys can probably squat 400 plus too, So now you got to be able to transition that power into speed, which we do by all of our plyo work and still trying to move fast. But you're going to get more explosive by getting stronger.
Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Mayn Idea Podcast, where today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Will Fuchs. For those that love this show and want to support it, please take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify and subscribe to the YouTube channel. This helps the show get discovered organically and helps me continue to bring on amazing guests. There are also now timestamps in the show notes, so feel free to jump around to the part that interests you most, although I always recommend listening to the episode in its entirety. I also want to give a big shout out to everyone that's taken the time to physically write a review on Apple Podcasts. This helps the show so much, and I cannot thank you enough. Will Fuchs is a mixed martial arts strength and conditioning coach at American Top Team, personal coach of one of the winningest fighters in UFC history and my all-time favorite, Andrei Arlovsky, and co-founder at HypePerform in Boca Raton, Florida. Will is also a certified functional strength coach and holds a bachelor's in exercise science. In the last 5 minutes of this episode, Will and I gave our picks for UFC 283, and although I know this card has already come and passed, feel free to tune in and entertain yourself as I pick pretty much every single fight wrong. This is a theme that seems to play out on my social media as well, so if you ever want to make money, just bet opposite me. I always put my picks up on the week leading into the fight, and I'm unanimously bad at doing it. I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I have. Without further ado, Will Fuchs. Well, Will, I'm glad we're going round 2 here. We had
we had a little operator error last week with my iPad not being fully charged. So
yes, such is life, man. I mean, a lot of this is trial and error, right? But we're able to weather the storm.
Little bit more time catching up with never a bad thing.
Exactly.
All right.
How do you train an MMA fighter?
Well, that's one reason. So I've worked with several different sports. I actually, got my start in strength and conditioning is, multi-sport and mainly football. But as you know, in football, there's 11 guys on the field on either team, so 22 guys on the field at either time, and same in most team sports. One thing that I love about fighting, and the reason why I've really kind of found my niche in fighters is that it's mano a mano, and if that fighter gasses quickly, or if they're not ready to fight, or if they're overtrained, it's going to be very obvious. So a lot more goes into training a fighter than a typical team sport athlete. And it's funny because in fighting, there's a lot of fighters that don't really focus on strength and conditioning a ton. Yeah. Which, it's a fine line because, and that's the wrong way to go about it personally, but I know several fighters that don't really do a ton of strength and conditioning, right. But, they get so much other training, like sport specific training with their sport, right? So, whether it's your wrestling or your striking, grappling, sometimes these fighters are putting in 2 to 3 sessions a day. Okay. So sometimes, as long as you work smart, less can be a little bit more with, with a combat athlete. But I like to focus on, kind of out of season. Let's say that a fighter's got, is more than 8 weeks out of a fight, typical out of camp schedule. That's when I really, do our, we're really, really trying to get stronger, right? So strength is absolutely the main focus during that time period, is building that strength. And I'll run 2 to 3, big 8 to 9 week linear strength cycles, a year, working on volume and heavy days. And other than those 2 to 3, the big, deep 8 to 9 weekers, typically I'm working in 3 to 4 week microcycles. We might run if for instance, just simple layman's terms, we might do 2 weeks of 3x9 all the way down to 2 weeks of 3x1, with those percentages getting gradually higher every week. Or a 3 week microcycle in strength work could be a 3-2-1 bench press, like a heavy 3, a heavy 2, a heavy 1, just So strength is really the focus out of camp, right?
Yeah.
And then when we get into that camp, that's when we really, really focus on that conditioning, right? So the engine, I don't care how good of a fighter you are, whether it's, if you can be an elite striker, you can be an elite grappler, elite wrestler, and you can be rounded. If you don't have that engine, especially, rarely now. These guys are so good. We see early finishes, but a lot of these fights go to the distance, whether it's a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight.
Right.
So conditioning and that speed component is absolutely that's the focus during camp, right? We try to build that strength, kind of out of camp, and then we maintain it, but we really try to build it outside of camp. So in camp, like I said, conditioning, speed. And I don't really lift my fighters super heavy at all in a fight camp. Like everything is focused on that.
Too much wear, right?
Exactly.
Like
yeah. People don't realize how taxing, like heavy linear strength work is on the CNS. And obviously having that CNS fast and ready to fire is so important in fighting, from reaction time to conditioning and this too, like it's hard to be at your fastest and your fittest when you're at your absolute strongest, right? So, obviously we want strong fighters, and our isometric strength is so important in fighting.
Yeah.
But
a lot of holding and gripping, and
exactly, we really try to focus on that out of camp, and then when we get into that camp, that the speed and that conditioning component is really where we spend our bread.
So if I look at kind of summarized here, like you look at it in two different ways, right? Like if you get a guy in the off season, like they don't not contracted for a fight, they got time. Right. You can invest in high volume, get them stronger, like move weight more efficiently. But what happens when you get these short notice fights? Like what does the S&C play a role there?
Yeah, I'll get into that exactly. So typically what I'll do, I've got a few different schedules at ATT. So they've got me with a few of the fighters more one-on-one, like, obviously Joanna and Jacek, she's one-on-one with me. Andre Arlovsky, he's one-on-one. So, but Andre especially, like Andre, I can't tell you how many, like Andre came to me, this was, I think in the year 2021. We had just been, we were just doing typical, like, off-season camp work, right? Just lifting and getting strong. And, Andre kind of likes to train like a bodybuilder too. So I've got to, he's not huge on the conditioning and speed work. Like he likes to get in there and lift and, kind of look like a bodybuilder. So I got to do enough of that to keep him happy while also getting him the stimulus he needs. But he came to me and was like, "Hey man, I'm fighting next weekend." So I was like, "Well,
sweet.
We got a week.
Do massage.
So got a session with you." So that's a little different case, but typically, like in the group setting, right, which is where most of my fighters are, I'll run those guys together, and say we have an 8-week strength cycle, but somebody might need to pull out of that and join the camp fighters, and they only get 3 to 4 weeks of that linear strength work. Then whenever some fighters depend, like I might want to let them lift and get stronger for 2 to 3 more weeks, while some people might. We might pull them out and throw them straight into camp work at 8 weeks. So,
right.
But by 6 to 7 weeks of training, all those fighters are going into my camp group. So typically, I'll do is just
what does camp group mean? Like, how does that change?
The fighters that are in a fight camp, right?
Right.
So obviously, the warm up. Typically, my warm up in my plyometric session, is the same for everybody.
Yeah.
But after plyo. And, after we do like our fast twitch speed work, whether it's a med ball toss or a broad jump or a vertical jump or, depth drop jumps, like after that, then I'll split them up and the camp fighters will, hit their conditioning with me, and I'll be in there, and the kind of the off season fighters go get their linear strength work in or whatever we're working on at that time. But, so typically I'll just, depending on time, my off season fighters, whenever they get 6 to 7 weeks from a fight, I just throw them straight into that, into that camp group.
And so what kind of exercises, let's split these two groups up because I like this. This will be a good contrast. So you have, let's say you get 10 fighters in, 5 of these guys are in camp, 5 are not. They do the warm up together, the plow stuff. We're warming our body up. We're doing the like depth drops, broad jumps, bounding, all this kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
When you split these guys, so from a very, very surface level,
right,
from having prepared for jiu-jitsu tournaments, I know that like the most valuable thing for me in preparation to that day, like that 4
Right.
weeks leading up, is reps, whether it's like controlled kind of reduced intensity reps on the mat or high intensity, purposeful, small bouts where you're getting the different speed elements. But like jiu-jitsu is the most important thing, getting ready for jiu-jitsu. So even my strength training, it's present, but I purposely dial it back quite a bit.
100%.
And we had talked about this last time, this idea of like, and I love this concept. You find it in a lot of smart trainers who work with athletes, is not wrecking the Ferrari.
Right.
These guys are the best, right?
Yep.
And the last thing that you can do as their strength coach is jack them up because you want to get them stronger. Yep. So what is if it's the same day, what does that day look like for the 5 in-camp fighters and the 5 out-of-camp fighters?
Okay, so I'll just kind of run you through, and we'll keep this, obviously can't cover everything, but like I'll just kind of.
And you got to keep your secrets.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, but all right. So, for one, I'm going to kind of lead into this with 2 parts, right? So, in my opinion, you need to be spending more hours in the gym outside of a fight camp, right? Yes. Like you like the hours you spend just working on little techniques and like the longer strength sessions and like really working on getting better and more rounded as a fighter and working on your weaknesses. That needs to happen outside of camp. If you got a fighter that doesn't really do a whole bunch, and they might be doing one little session a day, and then they get a fight and sit 7 to 8 weeks out, they're like, oh, I gotta be in the gym all day. Right. It's kind of not backwards, but I tell like the fighters that are really focused and I think they should spend more time in the gym outside of a fight camp, and the intensity is not going to be there. It might be more technique work and more working on. Just, okay, we're going to take an hour and work on this little technique right here. But in a fight camp, that's when we get ready, right? So, the intensity is going to be much higher and everything's going to be targeted, but the volume should be lower, obviously. So, and it also gives your body more time to rest and recover as well. So I tell fighters that, and typically my out-of-camp fighters, I'm doing 3 strength and conditioning sessions with them a week. My in-camp fighters is usually only 2. So, typically on Saturdays, a lot of my kind of off-season, out-of-camp guys will come in and lift with me, or depending on Saturday's kind of more of a free-for-all. Typically for my strength group, like I do more upper body focused strength work on Tuesday and lower body strength focused work on Thursday. Yeah. So that, and Saturday's kind of like a free-for-all session. So if anybody misses one of those 2 days, they'll make up on Saturday. Or, we might actually focus on some hard conditioning on Saturday just to keep it. My fighters are always going to have that good, solid conditioning base. But, so let's just say, all right, so I'll run you through it, just a mock Tuesday session or whatever. Cool. Or we'll do a lower body session. So say this is Thursday. So, typically, everybody's going to warm up with, some light stretching, not any holds or anything, but just light stretching, warming everything up. Like, your hip cradles, your ankle grabs, your high knee hugs, side lunge, front lunge, reach, progression, and just get everything kind of loose and ready to move. And then we'll move that into some movement, right? So like maybe some lateral bounding, for like knee stability, or like an A skip progression into a B skip into a C skip, butt kicks, just warming everything up, right? Yep. And so we'll typically take 10 to 15 minutes with just a good dynamic warm up, and then let's say today we are going to do like a depth drop to a broad jump, okay? Yep. So I might say, okay, we're going to do 4 max effort broad jumps from a depth drop, and we're going to hit a set every minute and a half. So that's kind of our quick like plyo speed power work for that day. Yep. And it could be a med ball throw, it could be a med ball punch, it could be a med ball slam, just something where we're moving fast to wake up and get that body ready to train. So typically I'll kind of run the dynamic warm up into some type of plyometric speed movement, and then I'll split the fighters. So let's say that I'm doing a 3-week microcycle of a heavy triple on it with a trap bar deadlift. Yep. So for the out of camp group, they're gonna go build to that heavy set of 3 on a trap bar deadlift, and then typically I'll do like, if I'm deadlifting, typically I'll do like one type of single leg strength accessory. Yep. So let's say it's a dumbbell split squat, and we're gonna do 3x10 on a dumbbell split squat, and then we'll do for like our posterior chain hamstring it could be single leg dumbbell RDL, right? So typically I'll do and this is just a kind of a mock.
Just to paint a picture.
Yeah. So we'll hit that deadlift, and then they'll do some type of single-legged strength, and then maybe a single-legged RDL for the hamstring. And then I'll typically always throw in a little bit of isometric work as well. So like since we stayed on the deadlift, maybe it's accumulate 2 minutes in a Superman hold. At your own pace. Yeah. So that would kind of be like a mock session for like the strength group. And let's say for we might do like a kettlebell high pull, something that's a little bit lighter where we move it fast. Yeah. So extending those hips fast, which extending your hips is huge in fighting. But with the camp fighters, we might do a similar movement. It's not the same movement, but like a much lighter weight and focus on moving that fast. Where we're going to do a 5-minute EMOM, 3 kettlebell high pulls, right? So or from a sumo stance or whatever. And then I'm going to take them, straight into like alactic power on the bike, right?
So they're just crushing.
Yeah. So alactic power, that's a very short burst.
Yep.
And then, a lot of recovery. So we might do every minute and 20 seconds for 6 rounds.
Yep.
An 8-second max effort sprint on the bike for 6 rounds. And then rest 2 minutes. And then we might do.
That's brutal too.
Yeah. We might do. Rest 2 minutes, and then 4 minutes of a 10-second max effort sprint on the bike. And then rest 2 minutes, 2 sets, 12-second max effort sprint. So that would be, 12 working sets. Alactic power, you never want to take much over 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Typically, it's even shorter than that, sometimes even 8 to 12.
And you're trying to, that's like an engine builder, right? Like when these guys are in there,
sure.
I'm thinking of counter-strike barrages, right? Like someone lunges forward, they throw 3 or 4, you return 3 or 4, you shoot a single leg, you miss it, you're back, and then you're dancing.
Just the short burst, yeah. And, you're going to hear a mixed reviews on like aerobic versus anaerobic work. And this too. A lot of strength coaches say, oh, aerobic, conditioning isn't that important in fighting. I'm of the frame of mind that every athlete that can be even an endurance athlete anyway, which, a 5-round fight, that's 25 minutes of work. And, that fight's occurring over 30 minutes. So anybody that's going to be, have even endurance a little bit, I always think that everybody should have somewhat of an aerobic base.
It's funny. It's funny you say this because I had a conversation with this guy, Richard Diaz, who's an elite. He's like an OCR coach. He coaches Hunter McIntyre.
Okay.
He's his running specific coach. He coaches this guy, Blue Benotum, who's like an 11-time sub 230 marathon runner. So the guy's like an elite conditioning coach, right? And he had an interesting perspective on that too, because I think even after talking to him, I still feel like, and maybe this is like the old school athlete in me and coach, I agree with you. Yeah. I think that like there's just when I have my run consistency where I just do 20 to 30 minutes, light jog, I'm not trying to break crazy paces, I'm running at like 8-minute miles, just cruising, breathing through my nose. Maybe it's mental, maybe it's not. I think like that really benefits me on the mats and in Muay Thai, right? It's just that it feels like it elevates my floor. His perspective, what I thought was interesting, was he spoke about jiu-jitsu specifically. He's like, look, you slap hands and a guy grabs your collar, you're pretty much going to be anaerobic in a really short amount of time. And it's unless you get a wildly dominant position and you're way more skilled than your opponent, it's unlikely that you're really going to go back to an aerobic like heart rate. And I thought that was true, but I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, my anaerobic abilities have a lot to do with my aerobic base, I think. And I might be wrong on that, but like I would want my fighters running and sprinting, not just sprinting all the time.
Right. No, I agree 100%. And like, for your listeners, I mean, there's so much more that that goes into this, but I'll make it super simple layman's terms. So like, basically, I mean, when you're doing more work than rest, layman's terms, it's going to be considered anaerobic. Your short sprints, you're lifting weights, much more rest than work. It's going to be, more work than rest, aerobic. And then when you're doing like your short sprints on the bike or lifting weights or whatever, and there's much more rest than the work you're completing, that's going to be considered our anaerobic training. So, if you take, now I love to run for myself. I'm a runner.
And you have a CrossFit background too. So that's
yeah,
like a
yeah,
big
So
component.
I don't,
right?
I don't train any of my clients like CrossFit. I don't train. I mean, obviously CrossFit has its, it's functional fitness, but there's a sport element to it, and risk and injury always comes into play when you're performing Olympic lifting for time. There's always, a chance you're going to get hurt. So, I would never advise an athlete or, a fighter to go do CrossFit. But
I agree.
I definitely have competed and played with it around for myself some as well, because I have fun with it. But I'm also not fighting for millions of dollars every time out. Right. So, I love to run, and some fighters just love it. Like they just love putting the headphones in and putting a hoodie on and just going out and hitting a 2 to 3 mile run. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but running and, the impact and just that repetitive impact is not probably the best for your joints. So typically I typically tell my fighters to hey, get their zone 2 cardio work, right? We're working in that 65 to 70% max heart rate, which, if you can get, anywhere from a couple hours of that a week, it stimulates ATP production, and, your engine is probably going to be better if you can get some, a couple good hours of that zone 2 cardio in per week. I typically tell fighters to do it on the bike, right? That's just that
low
steady
impact.
Yeah,
easy
exactly.
to control.
Low impact, and you're feeling good. I mean, zone 2 cardio is like you should be breathing, and your heart rate should be, like I said, in that 65 to 75% range. But you should be able to hold a conversation with somebody as you're doing it, right? So, I typically tell fighters, that have the time to, hey, try to get, maybe 3 30-minute zone 2 sessions in a week, right? And that's, they're not at a taxing heart rate level, probably going to feel better after it than you do before. And, it's also some good recovery, just kind of active recovery as well. So, that's kind of, just a good aerobic builder. And that's something that they can do on their own, where I don't have to take, I don't have to take 30 minutes of a session to do that. That's so, go ahead.
When you have these fighters in these camps, so right. I guess if we're talking now, we're talking about the group that's like in camp, you've separated them.
Right.
How do you handle the competitive nature of these athletes? Because they got to be some of the most competitive people in the world, right? They literally fight other people to win by vicious fashion to secure a bag for their family, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
There's nothing more motivating than that. So when you find them in this setting, how do you hey guys, we got to stay healthy here,
right?
Tone it down. We had spoken last time about Mosar just being this elite, such a gifted athlete. Could literally go probably start on a football team internationally, and he could be an athlete in so many different sports. He happens to be a gifted MMA fighter. Right. So how do you get a fighter like that in camp to dial it back a little bit and teach them the value that you and I know of recovery, right? Like things like your CNS. How do you tell a fighter, hey, I'm concerned about your nervous system?
Right. Yeah. So one thing, and I'll lead in with this, being an American top team, one of the top gyms in the world, I'm just so blessed and lucky to be able to work with these guys, and it makes my job relatively easy. Like you said, I mentioned about it last week. Like my job's not to wreck the Ferrari, right? So goal one is to get them to the fight healthy, which, knock on wood, and I don't think you'll ever have. I've never had any client or fighter, anybody, get so much as a little. Like I've never had anybody get hurt training. So, that's goal one.
Yep.
And obviously, goal two is to have them strong and fit and fast and as conditioned as possible for the fight. But when you think about the volume that these guys are putting in elsewhere, typically I'm working for 45 minutes to maybe an hour, 2 to 3 times a week. And it's funny because you mentioned Movsar. He's such a worker, man. And I have a ton of Russians in there, and I love my Russian brothers and sisters for sure. But they just are from that, the culture over there is just work for most of them. I got a couple that I could, push a little bit more, but it's just work. And a lot of times those guys don't necessarily understand the science that goes into it, right? So I got to pull them back. And it's funny because I'm blessed to be in the gym at ATT versus some strength coaches that are outside the gym and don't see and really know everything else these guys are doing. And not that they don't know, but me being able to see it firsthand and be there.
Yeah.
So like I said, my job is to not I less is more, and make sure that they're getting all their strength work in, and that they're conditioned and they're fast, but that they're also fresh and recovered and healthy. So I would say the biggest thing is just trusting the system and the way you feel in a fight. Like, most of my fighters have multiple fights under their belt with me now.
Right.
And when I first went into ATT, speaking of Mozart, so he was a little like, he was like, hey man, I'm not on the floor after this session. I need to do more. I need to do this. And he trusted me that entire first camp, and man, he looked great the entire fight. And he went elsewhere for a second camp, and a lot of these strength coaches outside, there's so many good ones that are around too, but some of them, their job is a strength and conditioning coach, right? So they might be doing 2-hour sessions a day, tons of heavy lifting, just running these fighters on the ground. And some fighters like that because they come out and they're like, man, I just got my ass kicked, right? But that's not always what they need. As a matter of fact, more times than not, that's not what they need.
And that sucks when you're in deep water in round 5 and you got 2 minutes left and you're literally drowning in your lack of conditioning and your muscles are full of blood.
It's about stimulating, right? It's not about obliterating. So his first camp with me, he trusted the system, but he was like, man, I could be doing so much more. And so his second, he actually went outside for his second fight camp and was a little bit overtrained going into that fight. Luckily, he won it. But if you see him in that third round, he gassed a little bit, right? So then for his third fight, at ATT, he came back and was like, "No, man, you're right. I trusted. I'm never gonna question our methodology again." So as far as it's just kind of the track record, and fighters in their talk, they know how they feel, and just trusting the system. And you have a lot of fighters too that, hey, 45 minutes, good workout, good sweat. Got my work in, but I've still got some energy after. A lot of fighters like that. They don't want to go in there and be killed for 2 hours and on a heavy yoke for what I'm saying. So it just I would say that just trusting the system and kind of I'm blessed, and I'm just it's the gym as a whole, right? Like it's strength and conditioning is a small portion. All of our coaches are elite at what they do, and I'm just blessed to be a part of it. But as far as my fighters and as far as the finish rate and whatnot, I think I'm very happy with the results I've had, and I'm a part, and a lot more goes into that than me, obviously. But yeah, I would just say trusting the system, just word of mouth between the other fighters and how they felt in fight camps with me. Versus, and we have Everton there too, who's great. There's a lot of great strength coaches around here as well. But me with somebody who might have overtrained them a little bit. They might feel like they've got more in the tank at the time, but when they have less in the tank at the fight,
you just want to feel good on fight day, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder. You touched on an interesting thing here about finish rates, and so I'm curious your perspective as a strength coach. Like when you're working with an athlete, if you know that the athlete, I use weak lightly, but let's assume that. For a fact that this athlete has more potential in terms of not just strength, not like just raw strength, like 3 rep max, but their ability to transition that strength into athletic power.
Right.
And that they're kind of lacking. Maybe it's like a work ethic thing. Maybe it's just generally their time availability. Maybe they're not prioritizing it.
Right.
How do you make a fighter, like, can you build knockout power outside of technique?
Well, yes, absolutely. So as and strength, like typically the stronger you are, if you can still move fast, the more powerful you're going to be, right? So we build like, as long as you're, if you're an advanced athlete, right, you might be, whether it's a broad jump or, like those guys that can vertical jump 40 inches, those guys can probably squat 400 plus too, So now you got to be able to transition that power into speed, which we do by all of our plyo work and still trying to move fast. But you're going to get more explosive by getting stronger. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah. So we definitely, try to increase that power, get that power up. Now you may never have a guy that's not saying that everybody's going to hit like Dustin Poirier,
Yeah, that guy's got bricks, dude.
Yeah, so that
He's
doesn't mean
got
that
bricks.
everybody's going to hit like him, but we can definitely get stronger and more explosive, 100%. But and that's absolutely a focus. So every fighter that I have, I'm trying to get stronger. I'm trying to get more explosive for sure.
Yeah.
But also, whether it's a 3-round fight, so my my methodology doesn't change a whole lot whether it's a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to have my guys, at peak conditioning, whether that fight's 3 or 5 rounds. But it's not, I might have a guy that has tons of knockout power, is known as an early finisher. Like, Bo Nickel is in ATT, but he doesn't train with me, right? But I know Bo, and if you watch his fights, he's finishing these guys, on the mat in 30 seconds or
but
less.
He could go 40 rounds.
Yeah, so but if I was training Bo, we would be prepared to fight for 3 to 5 rounds for sure. Right. Even though it's probably not going to go there. But yeah, so if these guys have a 3 to 5 round fight, I'm always have the possibility of that fight going the distance in the back of my mind. So it doesn't really change. But yes,
I feel like those wrestler guys, like if I had to choose a conditioning base that I would want to enter into MMA with, having that one, the body awareness that these guys have just positionally, like where their hips and their head and their hands and shoulders and everything are just at baseline, but their conditioning level is just, you're seeing it happen. You're seeing the UFC mold into wrestling kind of being the prerequisite.
100%.
A lot of these guys are coming from D1 or D1 adjacent, and they're really talented at that level. Or maybe they weren't as the most elite, but they had that baseline in there, and then they just tap into this mixed martial arts side and the conditioning. And it's such a different force because wrestling, it's like judo. I mean, those guys, it's all out for their match. And then every time you advance, you get less rest time before the next one. And you're only fighting the next best person. So it's a very grueling. I was just talking to Travis Stevens about this, the Olympic judo silver medalist, and he was like just describing these matches, internationally, where it's sometimes 4 or 5 in a row, which ends up being about 25 minutes, like an MMA fight, with progressively less rest each time. And each time you advance to a better opponent, and each time the better opponent is, you don't know if their conditioning is right at you. So it's nonstop war,
right?
Constant war.
Yeah, I would tend to say, as far as kind of hitting on everything you said. So in my opinion, now you've got to be able to fight. You've got to, typically fighters, rarely do you see just a super rounded fighter that's kind of good at everything be a championship level fighter.
Yeah.
Typically you got to be elite at one thing, right? Most of the time, I would say if you look back at your champions, are probably going to have that really good wrestling pedigree and background, because it's a little bit easier to develop the striking than the ground game. It's not to say that there haven't been great strikers going to become great champions, but yeah, I would say most of your elite fighters probably come from some type of wrestling, judo, or wrestling jiu-jitsu background, right? But if you can be the best wrestler in the world, literally the best wrestler in the world, and if you gas quick and you can't hold that pace for 3 rounds, you're gonna lose. Not always. Like, you can finish early, but eventually, these guys are so good now. You're gonna get into those third or championship rounds, and somebody's gonna get you. So that engine, man, like just having that good natural, engine, I think might be the most critical thing in the fight game. And then, being rounded, having one thing that you're elite at, whether it's your striking or, your wrestling or whatever. So that would kind of be.
I'm interested, like, through this whole Jon Jones absence, it's been really interesting listening to the chatter of different reasons why people think he's taking time. And I've always been viewing this through the eyes of a strength coach. And I'm like, this guy's the best ever, right? He's got aside from the disqualification, a perfect record, right?
Yeah.
Only other person to do that's Khabib.
Yeah.
And he is going to go up to the most vicious, quick knockout power weight class. How do you want to do it? You want to take a really long time and become that weight class. You don't want to go up to that weight class and fight. You want to become that weight class. You want to become a fully functioning elite juggernaut that is basically what you were at light heavyweight, just in the division that's above you.
Right.
And you think about Jon Jones's, like, his wrestling pedigree, his striking pedigree, his style. He has to have that level of conditioning. So not only are you now going up an insane amount of weight with strength, right? Like, he's putting that muscle on for real, whether it's legal or not. But he's going to do it. He's going to run a 440. He's going to have 25 minutes of nonstop power and wrestling and conditioning. 2 years older than the last time that he was in the octagon.
Yep.
That's a fucking project, man.
I'm really interested to see how. I mean, look, Jon Jones is, he's definitely on the Mount Rushmore fighters for sure.
For sure.
And his skill, when you move to heavyweight, like, I think he's going to crush it personally. I know it's been a long layoff. There's been other fighters to take long layoffs and come back and knock it out of the park. So I'm fully expecting Jon Jones to return to old form.
Me too.
But I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to see him back in there and see how it goes, because there always is questions on how how these guys are going to come back. But man, I'm not going to doubt that guy until I see somebody knock the crown off of him.
These older fighters maintaining their athleticism is really impressive to me, especially when you consider the demands of the sport. It's not just, like, I don't know, running or triathlon or something. It's a volume play. It's plug the stuff into your calendar, and either you do the volume or you don't do the volume, and then you show up on race day, and, like, maybe your sleep has affected that, and so you have a poor performance.
Right.
But these guys are dealing with so many factors. It's really hard to truly appreciate how diverse MMA is and how demanding across all the energy systems, all the planes of motion. When you look at it from, like, a biomechanical standpoint, it's a wacky sport.
Yeah.
So when you're, you've had the luxury and the honor of working with someone like Andrei Arlovski, who's just a certified G in the sport, right? Like, I remember watching him in high school and just being like, wow, dude, like, this guy is the man, right? Like, got the fangs, he backs it up, he looks like fucking Wolverine, the dude's a machine. And then for him to come back and stand on 2 feet and fight and win and win and win. What are you doing on a strength and conditioning program?
Yeah, so it's
because
funny.
They're like a masters, right?
Yeah, so Andre he was kind of on a losing streak, and I'm not going to say career in jeopardy, but I'm sure people were starting to question, when he was done and whatnot. And when I came into ATT, I told him, I was like, man, you know how to fight. You've been fighting all your life, and obviously in a fight camp, you got to stay sharp on all that. But his focus really needed to be on his body and his health and moving and becoming more athletic. And, I told him, I was like, your strength and conditioning should be a focus for you. So he really trusted me and was with me 3 days a week for a while. And, we do 2 days in camp. But, Andre, it's just getting in what we need, right? It's not overtraining. When I say strength and conditioning needs to be the focus, like, he needs to be at every session. And so he really focused on his strength and conditioning a lot more. And he reeled all 5 in a row, after that. Since I started with him, he won 5 straight. He just, took a loss to another guy in the gym, Pezal.
Right?
But, Andre, I think Andre's 5-1 in his last 6, or 5-1 in his last 6 now, I believe. They have 1 loss in there.
Which is that's wild.
Yeah, but anyway, so
that's wild. Against young guys and gnarly competitors.
But, the methodology doesn't really change. It's just more, even it just is kind of amplified a little bit, right? With him getting into that older age, we're not lifting super heavy. We're not doing anything that's going to break him down, focusing on mobility and recovery, while also just keeping his body healthy. And I worked with Andre a lot on his movement and athleticism too. So that's kind of how I got my start over at XPE, was in the movement and athleticism side. So that's
if we could depart for a second and go back to your time at XPE, because this really set the groundwork for your understanding of, like, true athletic conditioning, right? This is not just, you're not just a trainer in a gym. I mean, you're working with some of the most elite athletes in the NFL. You're working with them in their off season. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about how that process really prepped you to take on a position at ATT?
Yeah, for sure. So I started with XPE and Tony Villani and Andrew and Bill. It's XP's it's one of the top performance gyms in the country, especially NFL Combine, NFL off seasons, like really kind of their focus, right? And Tony started up in Atlanta, and then he moved his. I think he moved down here.
So is he kind of like an Eric Cressy for football?
So yeah, Tony is really like a speed and movement specialist. Like that's always been his thing, is athleticism and sprinting, and Andrew and Doug would do more of the strength work, and Tony and I would do more of the speed and movement.
Gotcha.
But he moved his business from Atlanta down here, and I started with him, I think, in 2014, and I was there until 2019, I believe. So I was there for, I think, 5 or 6 years. And so like I said, he really focused on the speed and movement side, right? Like not just running through a ladder and movement that doesn't transfer to sport, but he
right.
really kind of changed the game when it came to speed and agility training. I would say Tony's one of the top pioneers in the country for that. So and yeah, we had he's trained the best of the best. Not to like name drop his people, but and we all worked with him. Like we were all in there, and everybody was there. But Tony was definitely the main guy that pioneered that. And it's Mark Ingram, it's Anquan Bolden, it's Eric Berry, Travis Kelsey, Heinz Ward was one of his guys.
Who are those guys?
Yeah, Heinz Ward, Jamal Lewis, and all those guys come back. Chris Carter and everybody. Once you're kind of an alumni of XP, everybody comes back to work. Like all those guys come in and help out with the combine and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, it was I'm just so thankful for him, because he was that kind of the first one to give me my opportunity to get into that space. And so he was training a ton of the fighters, right? Like Rumble Johnson.
This is pre ATT. It was Black Zillions still, right?
Yeah, pre me being at ATT. ATT was around.
Okay, gotcha.
But that gym was in Boca. It's now XP Fort Lauderdale's now, or XP is now down in Fort Lauderdale.
Gotcha.
But we were in Boca, and Black Zillions were right here in Boca. So Kamaru Usman was in, Rumble Johnson, Michael Johnson, Rashad Evans. Really a lot of those Black Zillions. And it kind of started, I think Michael Johnson was the first fighter to really come over. And as you know, Mike moves very unorthodox, right? Like he relies on athleticism and movement a ton. And, Tony kind of pioneered that with him too. So a lot of the fighters, came over for that. So eventually it kind of was a falling block effect, right? So when Tony had all those Black Zillions, and then some of the ATT guys started coming over. Thiago Alves, in specific, was the first one. And it wasn't really for this reason, but as you know, like the Black Zillions and ATT, like those guys are cool, but there was a little bit of beef there, right, with the gyms, and I would say to the public eye for sure, they didn't really like each other. Gotcha. So Thiago was the first one. He kind of wanted to come in and get a piece of that with the footwork and the movement, and he came to me, and so because I had all the information and could apply it like Tony did, but he might not have always wanted to be in with those Black Zillion guys, right? So, and I haven't been told that, but that's just kind of how I perceived it. So yeah. Thiago came over, and then Santiago Ponzinibbio, Hyder Hassan, like several of those ATT fighters kind of started coming over to me, and we were training in a similar way, right? So that's kind of how my connection to ATT started. I was with Thiago. Thiago came over to me for, years, probably 3-4 years over at XP. And Santiago, same thing.
Santiago's another really unique mover.
Yeah, like he moves. He's in and out. He relies on his athleticism and kind of that unorthodox movement a lot too. And I had a big part of that. Over at XPE. So that's kind of how it started, right, with the fighters. And I had been at XP for a while and did really, really well over there, and had a huge client base and a ton of high schoolers and mainly football players, and it was a lot of fun, man. That I would do a group over there at 11 o'clock that was mainly college and high school athletes, and there would be 15 to 20 guys in that session, and we had a blast, and it was fun. And I missed my time over there, but after a time, I just kind of really, I wanted to go do more. Like I wanted to be a business owner.
Yeah.
So I actually left XPE and bought into a gym, Hype, that's right here in Boca. And so I, became an owner over there with Rob, and we started HypePerform, which was kind of like the performance part of Hype. And so we still had that big summer program, and I had my private clientele of athletes, right?
Right.
Several tennis players, several local football players. A lot of them followed me over there, the guys that had been with me. But but I kind of transitioned more into general population as well, right? I would say I probably went from almost 100% athletes at XPE. I had a few kind of general population clients for sure, 3 to 5 at any time, but I would have 50 athletes, whether it was groups or one-on-one. So almost fully athletes. And then when I moved over to Hype to become a business owner, it became more kind of 50-50-ish. And over the years there, kind of moved it even more into general pop, right? But Thiago Thiago and Santiago followed me over to Hype. So Thiago, he trained with me a lot. And that's kind of when I transitioned from doing like his footwork and movement, which we still worked on. But then I was his strength coach, right? So then I have another business too. I'm in medical supply sourcing and kind of have I've got some real estate going on and all that stuff as well. So I've got fitness isn't the only thing I do.
What made you want to? If you have all these irons in the fire, why go back to ATT?
So that's what I was going to tell you. So I had kind of moved not out of training athletes, but much more into the business side, focusing on my sourcing company and my real estate ventures and whatnot, and being an owner at Hype, but also training my clients there. I had kind of moved out of that a little bit, and COVID hit, and Phil DeRue, who's a good friend of mine, and respect Phil, and he does a ton of stuff like yourself, the podcast and training around. So they, he and Top Team parted ways, and he's got his own thing going on down here and doing really well. But they always keep 2 strength coaches on staff. So I already had, a relationship with a lot of those fighters over there. And Thiago recommended me. I actually didn't know Dan and Richie, but I knew a ton of the fighters. And Thiago recommended reaching out to me to see if I would, be willing to come on and be the second strength coach there. And so Thiago reached out to me, and I said, hey, is this something that you would want to do? And, it's so stupid at the time, like I had to kind of think it over, right? Like, I was like, I didn't know for sure. I was like, give me a couple days, let me think about this, because, I'd kind of moved over, and it's not like they were, asking me for a ton of hours or anything. But, it's in Coconut Creek, which is a little drive from here. I had never been over there at the time, so I didn't realize how close it actually was. And I've actually since moved closer to there, but it was about a 30-minute drive or more.
It's an hour both ways.
Which I know for you that out in LA, that's like going to the grocery store down the street. But here,
I mean, dude, been in San Diego now almost 3 years. Like,
San Diego.
I don't miss that shit at all.
I don't miss it at all. But whenever I met you, whenever you were in LA, so
LA, you go down the street and it's 2 hours.
Yeah, so LA is crazy. But so I thought it over, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this, man. It's been an awesome decision. Like now, looking back, I moved in over there, and I'm there. I'm typically there from about 5-ish to 7:30-ish on Tuesday and Thursday, and then 11 to 1 typically on Saturdays. So, it's not a ton of hours, but it's so much fun, man. And I'm not huge into the social media side. I don't post a ton of what we do on social media, and but it's been some cool exposure, and getting to meet a ton of cool people and from different cultures. I try not to overstep boundaries, but I try to also be a good friend to my fighters too. We'll go to dinner, we'll hang out, we'll go out every now and then and watch the fights, whatever. So it's been really awesome getting to know. I didn't know the Russian culture at all, and now. I train 20 or 30 of them in there, and seeing those guys progress, like a guy like Movzar. It's funny, his first session ever was at ATT was with me, really? And my first session ever at ATT was with him. So that's my dog, man. He.
One thing that I love about martial arts. I say this all the time, so I'm a little bit of a broken record here, but
Right.
you get on the mat, you don't care, man.
Right.
I don't care. I don't care where you're from. I don't care what you believe. It's just like you get this unique environment. And I think this is, for me, that experience roots back to just, I love training. I know you do too.
Right.
I love training. I love being in the, like, I just forget about what's going on. I forget about work stresses. I work, and it feels so good. And it's when you combine that with martial arts, you get this unique environment where everyone is on the mat at ATT at one time. Yeah. Granted, you get some flare-ups here or there. Sure, it's egos, and it's everyone's trying to be the best. Right. But everyone that's there is trying to make the other person better. Yeah. And vice versa. And that's like, you don't really find that relationship exchange that often in the world. Take LA, dude. How many times in LA did you meet someone and it was 100% face-to-face exchange where you were truly trying to... It's always like, what can I get from you? Who can you introduce me to? It's, and that goes on and on. But like within the mixed martial arts, within the martial arts gym setting, you just get this unique, mutually beneficial, special environment where everything else goes out the window. And I think it's like super healthy for personally, my psyche, just like how I view the world. It's good to be exposed to other people that think differently and check it all and just work,
Yeah. So kind of, and I'm going to get to that. So to end what I was saying before, it's just been awesome at ATT to get to know so many people from so many different backgrounds, whether it's, the people from right here that might be, like Austin and Paige, who are from, like Austin's from Alaska, Paige is from Oregon, and they were West Coast guys. So, people here right in the States, or, any of my, like Mozart from Russia, and all of my Russian guys, like, it's been awesome to get to know their culture. And like Mozart didn't speak a lick of English, when he came over here, not a word. And now he's like, speaking to me fluently. And actually when he's around, he's helping me translate to the other fighters, which happens a lot. I work with several fighters that can't really speak much English, but man, we laugh and we high five. And, we laugh and we high five and we hug, but and the Brazilians, it's been really cool just being at ATT, and I'm so grateful they brought me in. But so one thing about ATT that's made it really cool, and why I think one reason why we've had so much success as a gym is like that team component, right? Like Dan and Richie and those guys really focus on that team component, even though it's a one-on-one sport. Right. But and dude, I can't tell you how many times, you take, I'm not going to mention names here or anything, but like you take a top level fighter that everybody's going to know, and then you might take a nobody, that's not even in the UFC, that's in one of the smaller promotions. I can't tell you how many times I see somebody that nobody knows giving somebody that's at the top, like problems, or even submitting them or whatever. So that, there's every training partner in there is good. You look at a guy like a Johnny Eblin that just won, just won the Bellator title. Like, Johnny, nobody knew who that guy was a couple years ago, and man, there's tons of up and coming fighters in that gym that are just now busting onto the scene that are going to be household names very, very soon. So, and everybody in there is trying to, help people and get each other better and give good looks. So, and that, I would say kind of what you were saying, like top team maybe even amplifies by having, a bigger roster and being a bigger gym. And there's always somebody that can give whoever else, whatever look they need. So, that's been really cool.
How do you guys prioritize recovery? Like what kind of conversations do you have with these guys?
Yeah. I like, a lot of people think of recovery as like sitting in a cold tub or compression boots or whatever. And all that is a part, right? But your nutrition and your sleep, man, your sleep and nutrition, that should be your foundation of your recovery. Right. So, eating a good, balanced nutritional diet.
Do you guys work with, do they have access to outside of like the,
so I'm not a certified nutritionist. I'm very versed in nutrition, obviously, just through doing this for so long. But I can give tips and on supplementation and whatnot. I'm sure you and I'll get into supplementation in a second. Yeah. But I can kind of give tips and advice and whatnot. But when it really comes to the nitty gritty, what the foundation of what their nutrition should be, even though I may know it and may be able to say it, I really try to push them to a certified licensed condition or a nutritionist that they can help there. But I'm versed enough to help and definitely give tips.
But are they working with, like, I know the UPI provides nutritional components, but I don't know what is the overlap. So if someone's an ATT athlete, and can they work with UPI? Can they get
you mean with
stuff like that?
You mean with the
UFC,
PI and with
Vegas.
the PI? Oh yeah, for sure, 100%.
Okay, so there's not like exclusivity.
No, I mean, and if you're in the UFC, like they'll bring Vegas, they'll bring you to Vegas. Just like the guys have to get their physicals there, they got to see doctors there. Yep. So yeah, absolutely. We have like some of our guys go out there and work out all the time, and typically like if they're out there for a fight week or whatever, like that's where they're working out is at the PI. But so yeah, like and most of these people have their own nutritionists. There's several good ones around, and there's several that kind of pair nutrition with meal prep companies and whatnot. So nutrition and sleep, and I mean really 8+ for like 8+ hours for these guys.
Yeah, well, you're preaching to the choir. Like, I talk to people about this all the time. One of the biggest like the biggest stressors is lack of recovery, and I agree with you. Yeah. The massage tools and the cold plunge and the sauna and all, it is all great. It's valuable.
Yeah, sure.
But I look at that as almost the way I look at supplements. It's like supplemental. 100%.
Exactly.
You got to be eating well before you start taking stuff to make your nutrition better. It doesn't make any sense. So if you're sleeping 4 hours a night, and then you're doing massage guns and acupuncture, it's like just grab the low hanging fruit, dude. Figure out how to sleep more. All the good stuff happens while you're asleep. Like muscle recovery, mental cognition, recall, creativity. It's all happening then. And if you're a fighter, how much of your success depends on acuity? Like how can you see and respond and all that?
Right.
Dude, that's sleep 101.
Yep. For 100%. Yeah. The basis of your recovery should be just getting your body the fuel it needs and, giving your body the sleep that it needs. So those are going to be, 1A, 1B to that recovery. And then after that, I would say, like just taking care of your body, focusing on your mobility, getting a good stretch in, getting a good soft tissue massage, that would probably be next on my list when it comes to recovery. Sauna, like, some of these guys will just go kill themselves in the sauna for 2 hours and that's all fine and dandy. That's a little overkill for me. And actually, the sauna, so the sauna's heat's going to increase stress on your body, right? Like, promote heat actually increases the inflammation in your body. Cold decreases, right? So I would say like that contrast work.
I was going to say it's really the contrast,
cold. Yeah, so the contrast therapy. So a simple way to do it is like 5 minutes in a really, really hot sauna, minute to a minute and a half in a cold plunge. Do like 3 to 4 rounds of that is excellent. So I would say after that, kind of like, your hot, cold work and then cold tub as well. So if you want to go, really, try to flush that soreness and decrease that inflammation, sit in the cold tub for 8 to 12 minutes. That's
Dude, I'm on day 11, 12, day 13 of cold showers. Very first thing I do in the morning, cold shower.
You doing Wim Hof?
No, I'm not. I'm just like I get up, I put on my Apple Watch, I set a timer for 50, I count down to 45. As soon as it's 45, I put it on and I just stand in there and like try to fucking get through it. It's almost more like the mental.
Is that just in your your shower?
Yeah, I don't have a cold plunge or anything.
My shower doesn't get that cold. I wish it did.
It sucks, dude. I mean, I stand there and I look at the faucet and I'm like, really? And I just rip the thing and go for it. And at the end,
we have a cold tub at ATT, and I typically try to get in that sauna and kind of do, because I still train hard myself. I'm not at a competing level anymore with CrossFit.
So I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I like MMA. Seems like a very like blood in, blood out sport, right? Like the best coaches have been former athletes. There's just like this camaraderie and respect.
Yeah.
Is there an expectation, one, that you train, or two, do you train? Do you train like jiu-jitsu, wrestling? Do you ever get in with striking? Do they actually, yeah, that first. Do you?
Okay. So are you talking about training with like MMA?
Not with them, but just in general. Like, do you participate
Oh
in any
yeah,
kind of martial arts?
I'm in the gym working out, 2 hours a day, 6 days a week if I have time, and if I don't have time for that, I'm getting as much in as I can.
Wrestling.
No. So
No, that's what I mean. So, do you
yeah.
wrestle, jiu-jitsu, or strike?
I do not, but I'm versed in it enough. I do not train that consistently.
Yep.
But I'm versed in that enough, to be able to go do it if I need to. But I'm not elite at that. I would be considered very, very amateur, basic level.
But for the fighters, are they like, yo,
no.
Will, you don't even train? Like, is there any of that going on?
No, they'll mess with me. Like Danny Sabatello was messing with me the other day to get in the gym. I mean, I would say the striking component would be more. I've got. I've taken boxing classes and I was an athlete myself growing up for all my life and still consider myself one.
Yeah.
But that would probably be I would be able to get more advanced as a striker than on the ground for sure. But I'm their strength coach, right?
Yeah, that's why I ask. Is there any kind of contention there?
So they expect me to have the methodology that they need from a strength and conditioning standpoint to get them into a fight. I'm not their wrestling coach. I'm not their striking coach. So I need to be as versed as I can be and live that lifestyle of being their strength coach.
Yep.
Not their striking coach, or not like a Mike Brown, just all around MMA coach. But yes, I train, but I still train. I mess around with CrossFit, so I'm right over here at CrossFit Hype in Boca, and I work out for an hour and a half to 2 hours, 6 days a week, or as close to that as I can. And I still recover. I still try to get a massage a couple times a month. I'm still, typically Tuesday and Thursday night, I might hit some contrast work in the sauna and get on my phone, finish up some emails or whatever I've got to do from the day, and or hit the cold tub. So yeah, I still do all that and train and take care of my body, but it's not MMA focused. I'm a strength coach, so I try to be healthy and look the part as well.
Do you ever feel a temptation there, like being a competitive athlete, do you ever feel like you're in the gym, dude, and you're like, damn, dude, I know I have that grit to just work hard.
Obviously,
I want to go learn that.
Had I gotten into that when I was 22, when I was younger, and that may have been a drive. But one, I don't like being bad at something, So I don't like I don't like being bad at something or being I was always one of the better guys, coming up in sports or whatever. So I like, to be considered good at something, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know how I would handle, hopping on the mat with these guys and just getting my shit absolutely rocked.
Might be good for you.
So the I don't, the drive to do that, but I'm also older, I'm 32.
Yeah.
And I feel great and I'm healthy and I feel as good as I ever have. But if I was going to do that, there's no shot that I've got the time to get elite, in the game of MMA. So no, it's not really a huge drive that's there for me right now. But obviously being known as one of the better strength coaches around, that's kind of what drives me.
Well, it's definitely. That's a not an old adage, but I remember in skiing, I want my coaches to be good coaches. Right. I honestly don't care if they can ski. It's nice to ski with them, but I want them to be good ski coaches.
Yeah.
Because when I get to the bottom of a run and I want some insights, I don't want someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, right? Like you said, you want to talk about MMA and tactics, go talk to Mike. You want to work some jiu-jitsu stuff, talk to Poompa.
Yeah.
You want to talk strength and conditioning, I'm your guy.
Yeah.
And so that specificity is a luxury that a place like ATT can have because you guys are such a big machine. You churn out top contenders in every promotion.
Yeah.
And it's because of that, right? Right. You guys have the ability to have specialty in different areas. Yeah. And you see it pay out in the fighters. These guys are so many world-class people trained under your roof.
Yeah. Yeah, no, man, it's super, super cool. And I think, kind of that team component and the coaching too. And dude, one cool thing about ATT is you take a guy like Thiago and Thiago's been awesome to watch, man, because I'm so grateful for him because he was kind of the first big fighter, and he was still big time. I mean, not that he's not big time now. Like, he's still obviously a legend, but he was still in the peak of his fight. I mean, he was probably on the backside of his UFC career.
Yeah,
but he was still right there. When he started with me, and he had several fights with me in the UFC, probably 4 or 5 fights, at least that I was involved with him to some point in his camp. But so grateful for him giving me the opportunity, to because he was kind of the first big fish in the fight game that trusted me to kind of take over for him full time. But and if it wasn't for Thiago, I probably wouldn't be where I am now in the MMA game or the top team. So grateful for him. But it's cool because he was such a fighter, right? And when I first started with him, and it's typical, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, like, as an athlete in the MMA, like, you do need to be kind of selfish, because that's your career, like, your body and so seeing Thiago go from, fighter to coach has been awesome. And,
that's a huge evolution.
Yeah. A lot of these guys. And now, dude, Thiago in a short amount of time has become, one of the more renowned, and he may not be known around the world yet as a great MMA coach.
Yeah.
But the people in Vegas know. Like the important people around the game know how good of a coach Thiago is. So, and that happens a lot. You take a guy like a Pedro Munoz. So Pedro, he's still got some tread on his tires in the fight game for sure.
For sure.
But he's 100% going to go into coaching, and he'll be right there at ATT. And you look at a guy like Pahumpa who fought at ATT.
Yeah, totally.
So like, it's been cool seeing all these fighters kind of evolve into coaches. And you do have your, like, obviously Mako's the wrestling guy, Pahumpa more jiu-jitsu, Mike Brown just great all around MMA coach, Daya Davis striking, Anderson striking. So it's a cumulative effect, but it all works really, really well together. And most of these guys, like me, I don't have to have an MMA background because that's not my job, But Daya is Daya is a boxing coach, obviously, but he's Poirier's guy, he's Joanna's guy. So, but most of these guys have an MMA background where they can, their specialty might be striking, but they know how to apply it to MMA.
Yeah. So. It's a special place to be. It's going to be fun to watch these guys in 2023. It's already kicking off. I'm very glad that the UFC's back. So it's going to be fun to watch all your work come to life in the octagon, man.
Yeah, man, it's awesome, dude. And I enjoy watching the fights. I'm just going to stay in and watch the fights at home this weekend, but it'll be good to have that back. But I get asked to go all the time.
Yeah.
I probably should take advantage of that more. I don't. I just kind of. I like being a little bit more behind the scenes. I'm not huge on promoting it on Instagram and whatnot. I mean, I've got a decent Instagram following, and you'll see stuff on there with stories and some pictures and stuff and whatnot. But, I think, that's one reason why, a lot of these guys know and trust me is because I really don't try to use their image to prop up my own,
Right.
So, I even though I should probably take advantage of going out to the fights more, but I don't. But maybe I'll start to do that more. I was actually going to go out to Vegas for Movzar's fight with Bryce Mitchell, which unfortunately Movzar had a knee injury and a setback.
Yeah. Man,
but he'll
Bryce
be back.
You talk about Bryce gassed in that fight. That was
well, dude, Tapuri is a monster. He's like a Movzar.
Dude.
Yeah, those two guys.
He looked.
Tapuri and Movzar will definitely see each other one day, and that will be an absolute battle. Obviously, I think my guy Movzar wins that fight, but Tapuria can beat anybody on this planet. So,
he dropped it in the 6th gear, and he just stayed in 6th. Like,
I was fully expecting and not surprised one bit by how that Tapuria Bryce Mitchell fight went.
Yeah, dude, Tapuria Pimblett is a horrible matchup. Horrible matchup.
Like, I mean, first off, like, look, I respect Patty, and like, I mean, he seems like a good guy, like, and his speech after that fight in London was awesome. So I'm not hating on him, but dude, Tapuri would murder him. Like, it would.
While we're on it, I've never done this before, but I want to do this since
I kind of hope that,
since you're in the zone here. Let me get your picks on this main card.
Let's see. I'll just run. I'll pull up the card right now.
Yeah, I got it right here. I'll
Oh,
run
you
you
got
through
it?
these.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got 5. So Paul Craig, Johnny Walker, wild matchup.
What's the odds in that fight? Do you have the odds?
It doesn't list it. No,
Let's
it
see.
doesn't have it.
I'm gonna pull up. Let's see.
I'm gonna go with Paul Craig on that, dude. I like that guy. I think he's coming back off the loss, and he's gonna triangle him.
I would probably agree with you. Let's see here. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna get the card in front of me as well.
All right, cool. Yeah, give
so,
me your strength coach insights here. I want to know who you're picking on these. We'll do just the main card because I want to be respectful of your time here.
Oh man, that's. I'm gonna go the other way, man. I'm gonna go with Paul.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna text you when this goes live. Okay. All right, Lauren Murphy, Jessica Andrade.
I mean, look, Lauren Murphy is definitely a live underdog in that fight, I think. Yeah. But I mean, Andrade, man, I think she wins this fight. I'm not saying that the odds in that fight are a little bigger than I expected, but I mean, Andrade is gonna. I gotta go with Jessica.
This is my favorite matchup on the whole card, actually. Neil Magny, Gilbert Burns, wild matchup, dude.
Dude, I'm a huge Gilbert guy. I know Gilbert. He's down here. He was a Black Zillion. He was with us at XPE some. Great dude. And he. But man, I'm. Kamara was a Black Zillion, but I know Kamara well and spent a lot of time with him when I was back at XPE, and I think Usman is the best on the planet right now, dude. And it's like he was winning every second of that last fight, and
he got caught. That's fight game though.
Yeah, he got caught. So but it's funny how he loses and gets bumped to number 5 P for P in the world whenever he was dominating that fight, and they're going to fight again, and he's going to dominate that fight too. But Gilbert
sounds like you're going Neil Magny on this.
Oh no.
Oh, okay, so you got Gilbert.
Gilbert absolutely had Kamara rocked and almost had finished early. And no, I think Magny's a great fighter, but I think Gilbert wins this fight.
It's a war of technicality versus brute. Yeah. It'll be interesting. Figueiredo Moreno.
All right, so I'm definitely.
I think Figueiredo wins this.
I'm going Brandon Moreno here.
Wow.
But now Pantoja's one of Everton's guys, but Everton's the other strength coach there at Top Team, and we're all in there at the same time, and we're all a family. So even the fighters that train with him, we're all in there. We all know each other. We all get hug and high five and whatnot. But what I'm hoping that maybe my boy Pantoja can somehow step into this, and if one of them misses weight or something happens, but because I think Pantoja is the best fighter in that division.
You're saying as a step in, as a last.
Yeah, well, he's the alternate there, and he's actually I think he's down there right now. So he's sitting on go, ready to fight, and he will. If it's not his time this weekend, which he's the alternate, but I'm sure that I think Moreno wins this fight, and I think Pantoja and Moreno fight sometime in 2023, and I think Pantoja gets that belt. He's already beaten Moreno twice.
And then the final one, the OG, Glover Teixeira, Jamal Hill.
Oh man, dude!
That's such a good, interesting matchup.
Yeah. So I mean, dude, that fight with Yuri, Glover looked amazing. Glover had that fight won, and Yuri, Yuri just looks like a Spartan in there, and Glover's old and bouncing around and kind of lumbering around in there. But dude, he was giving him the work, and he was winning that fight. I'll say this: I'm going to go with Glover. I hope it's Glover. Would be a great story. I hope he gets it back. I think if he can return if he can keep the form that he's had in his last few fights, I think Glover wins it. That might be kind of me hoping, because Jamal Hill's a beast. But I think if Glover can channel what he's had his last few fights out, and if he can, even that like I said, he was right there in that last fight with Yuri.
I think it's going to be. I think that will become more of a war than you might expect, given the past couple of Jamal fights. But I think that Glover's a smart fighter, and I don't think he's going to walk into some crazy haymaker and get teed up. You know, he's going to have a game plan. He's going to be smart about it.
You'd hope not. You know, I mean, he's at that age where he could probably, you know, go out and look like shit at any time. But but I'm not expecting that. And I think that if he can, you know, hopefully if he wins this fight and gets the belt, maybe he'll retire. I don't know. You know, obviously I'm never going to tell anybody what they should do with their career. That's up to him. But you know, hopefully if he can just channel it for one more fight and just stay at, you know, he's looked great his last 2 fights, even though his last one was a loss.
And we want that for him, man. It's Glover, dude. If you've been watching the sport for a while, you have a lot of respect and admiration for that guy.
So if he can channel it for one more and stay true to form, I think he gets it done.
Yes, sir. Well, there you have it. The official picks from the strength coach at American Top Team, Will Fuchs. Right. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, running it back a second time because we had the funky connection the first time. Yeah. But we'll definitely have to do this again, man.
Absolutely, man. Let me know anytime. And it's been great catching up with you, and glad your career's taken off and that you're happy and you're crushing it out there in Cali.
Thank you, brother.
Awesome, man.